Chinese ships brutally fired at 10 US and Philippine ships without mercy in South China Sea. China's Coast Guard fired water cannons at Philippine ships near the disputed bedding Scarborough in the South China Sea today, Tuesday, September 16th. Citing Reuters, Tuesday, September 16th. Chinese Coast Guard spokesman Guan Yu said as many as 10 Philippine ships illegally stormed China's territorial waters at the bedding Scarborough from various directions. Guan Yu also blamed the Philippine Coast Guard ship 3014. He added that the Philippine ship hauled a stern warning from the Chinese side and accidentally crashed into a Chinese Coast Guard ship. China Coast Guard has legally implemented control measures against Philippine ships, said Guan Yu. He added that the measures included measures such as verbal warnings, restriction of routes, and firing of water cannons. A spokesman for the Philippine Maritime Council has denied accusations by the Chinese Coast Guard. Other Chinese cases of disinformation and propaganda, he said. Analysts say Beijing's plan to categorize the benchmark as a nature reserve is tantamount to efforts to take a high position in the atoll dispute, known as Huangyan Island in China and the bedding Panag in the Philippines. This tension came a week after China approved plans to make bedding Scarborough China's national heritage. Defense analysts say China's plan to categorize the benchmark as a nature reserve is tantamount to efforts to take a high position in the atoll dispute, known as Huangyan Island in China and the bedding Panag in the Philippines. Analysts also said that China's efforts were a test of how the Philippines responded. The disputed area consists of a series of coral reefs and a triangle-shaped stone covering an area of 150 square kilometers. The region, which is also part of the struggle for sovereignty and access to fishing in the South China Sea, is an annual trade route worth more than $3 trillion. Tensions at the bench have sparked diplomatic disputes in recent years. However, until now there have been no incidents that have increased to become armed conflict in that location. Both China and the Philippines accuse each other of provocations and violations. The provocations were fired by water cannons, crashed the ship, and maneuvered the Chinese Coast Guard ship at the bedding. This is considered by the Philippines as a dangerous effort, including fighter jets that overshadow Philippine aircraft in the region. The latest exchange marks one of the sharpest confrontations in months in the ongoing Scarborough Shoal standoff. The Philippines has vehemently rejected China's version of events, calling Beijing's allegations a distortion designed to justify an increasingly aggressive posture in waters that both sides claim. Rear Admiral Roy Vincent Trinidad, spokesperson for the Philippine Navy, dismissed Chinese claims as a false narrative intended to legitimize illegal presence and coercive and aggressive actions. Meanwhile, Manila is preparing diplomatic and legal countermeasures. The Philippine government has filed a diplomatic protest regarding China's plan to designate the shoal known to Beijing as Huangyan Island as a national nature reserve. Philippine officials argue that this move violates international law, particularly the 2016 ruling by the Permanent Court of Arbitration, which affirmed that China's expansive maritime claims in the South China Sea lack legal basis. Maritime law and regional security experts say the creation of a so-called nature reserve could be a strategic gambit by Beijing and not simply an environmental initiative. Some analysts suggest that by imposing regulatory control and restricting passage, China may be able to further consolidate its de facto control over Scarborough Shoal. For example, J. Batong Bakal of the University of the Philippines described the reserve plan as a pretext for more assertive territorial enforcement. Others point out how these incidents form part of a pattern. Use of water cannons, collision or near-collision maneuvers, and verbal warnings are becoming frequent tools in what many regard as China's incremental efforts to shift facts on the ground. Several foreign governments and international bodies have expressed concern. The United States has reaffirmed its treaty obligations to the Philippines under the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty, emphasizing Manila's rights under international law and calling for peaceful resolution through diplomatic channels. Other Southeast Asian states and multilateral groups are watching closely. There is apprehension that any move by China to enforce restricted zones, whether under the guise of environmental protection or territorial assertion, might set precedents affecting their own claims and maritime rights. The risk of miscalculation remains high. While neither side appears ready for full military escalation, repeated confrontations, especially involving collisions, water cannon use, or jets shadowing aircraft, could spiral into more dangerous encounters. There is also concern for civilian actors, including fishermen, who may be caught in the middle. Already, Filipino fishing communities have reported harassment and shrinking fishing grounds near the shoal. Reuters. Analysts believe that China is testing how far it can push maritime assertions before eliciting a more forceful or coordinated international response, especially from allies of the Philippines. Meanwhile, Manila may increase its efforts to internationalize the dispute. Seeking support via multilateral institutions or legal bodies. What was once a recurring but manageable series of maritime confrontations may be evolving into something more systemic, a struggle not just over territorial sovereignty or fishing access, but over who defines the rules under which contested waters are governed. As China's nature reserve designation and its control measure claims become more widely implemented, the Philippines and its partners face difficult strategic choices. Whether to respond assertively, seek broader diplomatic backing, or pursue legal means to contest China's actions. Given the shoal's ecological importance, its role in regional fisheries, and its position along one of the world's busiest trade corridors, the stakes are not just bilateral but regional, possibly global. The international order, especially in maritime law, may be tested, depending on how both sides proceed and how far external actors are willing to press for norms and legal rulings to be respected.